It's time for the drive with Q on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. Now, here's Q.
Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a What the Frig Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. We'll take you up to 6 o'clock straight up. Rich Quinones is here. Mi hermano Angel Martinez behind the glass producing the show, keeping us on the air. 2 hours to play with. Don't forget the 727-858-6650. That'll get you involved in two-way sports talk. Bring something to the table. We are part of the Coastal Sports Network on this, the 3rd of January, 2025, and a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of NFL to dive into, a lot of college football to dive into, and we certainly want you guys to engage as always. 727-858-6650. Saturday slate, Sunday slate. We'll get into CFB. We'll get into a little bit of the NBA as well, and we've got a lot to digest, and we have a lot to get into going forward. And with that, this is where we're at right now. You've got week 18 in the NFL, and Jovan Alford will join us around 4:25. Lloyd Vance around 4:45 or so. We'll go NFL heavy, and we'll get their thoughts on what's going on in the world of sports, especially from the NFL. Because listen, it is a huge weekend in the NFL. You've got some playoff seedings. You've got an opportunity for a couple teams to punch the final tickets into the playoffs. You've got the argument, debate, the narrative that's been pushed all week long, especially the last several days. Resting players, playing players, resting starters. Saquon Barkley going for Eric Dickerson's record. I've talked about that throughout the week since it was announced that Nick Sirianni is going to rest Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts still in concussion protocol. He wouldn't have been available at all. And they're going to sit the starters. Josh Allen will play a series because he wants to keep his streak alive, right? Baltimore is going to go all out to try to win the division. Pittsburgh is going to go all out to try to win the division. Kansas City is resting players. They've got it locked up as the number 1 seed in the AFC, which means Denver is going to go all out and beat a bad backup Kansas City squad, get a win and punch their ticket to the AFC. You know, then you get into the dregs of the NFL with some of these teams that are really bad, and everyone's going to push the narrative, the perception, the tanking, the losing the draft picks. It's nonsense. We're going to squash it in a couple moments. Then all of a sudden, you also have the MVP conversation, the MVP race. And it boils down to 2 or 3. We've been going back and forth for the last, 3 or 4 weeks. I think you and I have been debating the MVP conversation, the MVP race. So we will dive into that as well. 727-858-6650. That'll get you involved on a What the Frig Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. By the way, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays going forward, 4 to 6 live. And then, of course, Tuesdays and Thursdays, you'll get the audio version live as well, 5 to 6 on the SR 1029 FM The Game website. And eventually, we will add that video component. We're still working out some kinks here and there, and that typically happens, and that's okay. And, again, we're trying to perfect the craft, and we're trying to put out a entertaining product for you guys who are always engaged with us. So with all that, here we go. You've got this narrative now, and this is what I've heard over the last 24 to 48 hours, and it's absurd. It really is. This is what I've heard. If the Philadelphia Eagles rest Saquon Barkley, and they rest their starters, and if they lose, it's a huge monumental disappointment. Basically, because the Eagles are resting their starters and resting Saquon Barkley, all the pressure's on them to win the Super Bowl. It is just the dumbest thought comment I've ever heard. of late, of recent. It really is. It makes absolutely no. You can't say that and actually be taken serious. The record in itself, you can make the pros and cons. You can come up with a list, the pros and cons of why you think Saquon should go out there and break the record, do it against the Giants, get 101 yards. He had a couple opportunities to pad the stat earlier in the season. He pulled himself out. Could have got another 40 or 50 against the Dallas Cowboys, pulled himself out. Okay, 2,000 yards. It's a hell of a season. So I understand. The risk to reward was pretty simple. If he goes out there and he gets hurt, you guys are going to crucify Nick Sirianni. You're going to call for Nick Sirianni's head. You're going to call for Howie's head. You're going to call for Jeffrey Lurie to sell the friggin' franchise because that's just how the fan base thinks. That's it. The offensive line, torn between it. You want him out there. You want him to get the reps. You don't want this team to go into the playoffs rusty. Fine. But just because you're sitting, I feel as though this narrative is not, you're just sitting the starters, but you're also sitting Saquon because you're sitting Saquon and he's not going to break the record against the Giants. Now, all this pressure is on you. All this pressure is now on the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? I talked about this on last night's edition of The Drive. Give me a team that's bound for the playoffs and there's not pressure on them. Like, give me the one team where you sit there and say, there's every team. There's pressure on these teams. Especially when you win 12, 13, 14 games. I mean, hell, you might have a 14-win team that might be a wild card coming out of the NFC, which is unheard of. But can you honestly and objectively and intelligently say there's no pressure on Buffalo Bills? There's no pressure on the Baltimore Ravens? There's no pressure on Kansas City or Philly or Detroit or Minnesota or Green Bay? It's absurd. So that's the first jackass comments that I've heard of late, which again just makes no sense. Then the newest one now that this is the narrative that everyone's pushing too. Oh my God, did you see the Philadelphia Eagles schedule next year? Oh man, you got to win it this year. What are we doing? We're looking ahead. Season's not even over. They haven't even played in the wild card game. Every team there's pressure, period. No matter what. I don't care who you are. Look at the way it's lined up tomorrow in the NFL. Look at how it's lined up. You've got the two games on a Saturday. They're going to decide the AFC North. We know Baltimore is a big-time favorite. Cleveland's, resting everyone, whatever. They don't really have a lot of people to play, but it is what it is. Baltimore's now is a 20-point favorite, which is unheard of. Unheard of. Ravens win. Get a Steelers loss, you win a division. Well, again, we've been going through the playoff scenarios, but again, Ravens win, it's pretty much, it's theirs. 12-5 beats 11-6 any time of the day. Steelers got Cincinnati. Cincinnati trying to get in, right? So if Cincinnati wins, they need some help. Kansas City, Buffalo, they don't want to see Cincinnati, but the Steelers are going to go full throttle because now it's all about the seeding. Atlanta, Tampa Bay, we'll get into that as well. And then, of course, Sunday night, Minnesota and Detroit. The winner of that game will get home field advantage and the top seed in the NFC. The road will either go through Minnesota or Detroit. And you look at these games, and again, early on paper, not bad matchups, but this is what you get in week 18. Like, this is the scenario the NFL wanted, was that you're deciding some playoff fates in week 18. There's a reason they put those two games on Saturday. There's a reason they have and flexed Minnesota to Detroit to keep all the eyeballs occupied. Saturday, boom, Sunday night, here we go. A lot will be decided. And I also believe the MVP race will be decided this weekend. It is a very tight race. So my thought, even going into Saturday's game, is once Baltimore jumps all over Cleveland, maybe Lamar Jackson adds in a rushing touchdown and 2 touchdown tosses, another 235, and they're up 23-6, or they're up, 30-7 going into the third quarter or the fourth quarter. He's getting pulled. He's done. Henry, pad the stats. They're done. Buffalo, does Josh Allen take a hit when it comes to the MVP conversation because he's only going to play one series and he's not going to have an opportunity to pad the stats? Does it open up the door for Lamar Jackson? Could it open up the door for Jared Goff? Could it open up the door for the Tampa fans that are screaming at me, Baker Mayfield? Or what about Sam Darnold? And I pulled up some interesting numbers too when we get into this conversation. Okay? When we get into this conversation and you're talking about the MVP race in the NFL, you have to step back a little bit and you have to look beyond the stats at times. 727-858-6650. But there's the pressure, this just conversation. Look, I would rather the conversation be this. For some of these teams, if they don't make a deep run, are we talking about Sean McDermott being out in Buffalo? Are we talking about Nick Sirianni being out in Philadelphia? Is the pressure going to be on Dan Campbell if he continues to go for it on fourth down and it blows up in his face? That game is fascinating on Sunday night. It's fascinating from this standpoint. I think we can all agree Detroit has a great offense. Their defense stinks. They got littered with the injury bug. They lost a lot of key players. The secondary is suspect. So on the surface, you look at that game. And right now, Detroit was sitting right around 3. It's now dropped to 2.5. So you got the hometown. You got the home 3, really, the 2.5 with the hook. If Dan Campbell, he knows that his defense can't stop anyone. Can't stop anyone. So for a fact, Minnesota should be able to put up 24-27, at least high 20s in that game. Which means that Dan Campbell, with everything at stake, when it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, he's going to go for every single fourth down in the game. Doesn't matter where it is. It's just, we've seen it before. If they convert, then the Lions have an opportunity to win this game and maybe hit the over. If they don't, the Lions are going to be in trouble, and I can see Minnesota winning this game by 7 or 10 points. So the pressure's on from that standpoint. The pressure's on Buffalo. The pressure's on Kansas City. The pressure's on the Philadelphia Eagles and all these friggin' teams making the playoffs. What do you think? You're going to try to dance into the playoffs and say no pressure? And the narrative, too, with the tanking, it's ludicrous. Perfect example. Now, again, you guys might think this is apples and oranges, but Seattle's 9-7. Okay? They're 9-7. Seattle didn't have a great season. I think we can all agree, right? But they're eliminated from playoff contention. But you know what? Geno Smith is going to go out because if Geno Smith has over 68 completion percentage, if Geno Smith throws for over 185 yards, if Geno Smith wins the game and Seattle gets their 10th win, it's a $6 million kicker. $2 million, $2 million, $2 million. Don't tell me these players are not incentivized. Some of them might not be on the roster. So again, the whole argument with Jacksonville and the Raiders and what are you guys doing winning the Giants? I can't believe you beat the Colts. It's just, it's a dumb conversation because there's no tanking in football. There isn't. You rest guys, I get it. You want to see if young guys can play, I get it. But this notion that they're going to go out and purposely try to lose the game, I mean, I'm joking with my buddies. I'm like, where the hell did this come from? It bothered me more that they put up 45 and they actually look competent. But that's the NFL. Livelihood, careers, film, everything is on the table. 727-858-6650. Let's see what the gentlemen have to say and or the ladies on the Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. We will pull up the comments in a moment. Angel he either said I was number 1 or he told me to wait. 727-858-6650. As a reminder, we are brought to you by our good friends over at Zen Auto Concepts, the number 1 detailing shop in all in Florida. GPG, Gas Pump Guy. Good afternoon, my brother Q. How are you doing in this new year, my brother? Doing fascinatingly well. Just unbelievably well. And why not? Vince chimes in, well, welcome to 2025. Does that mean getting on board with the, get off the lawn kind of comments, right? The still offer video sometimes. That is not true. That is not true. I said kinks, you say? Right, kinks. There's no need to apologize to the FCC. Bunker Boys Trevor chimes in. Hold on. What stat line Jackson Mayfield have to put up for MVP? Mayfield's not winning the MVP. I mean, just stop. He's not. Baker Mayfield, you guys, Baker Mayfield has, I mentioned this last night. He's put up monster numbers. Don't get me wrong. He's put up monster numbers. I mean, I looked at his stats last night when I was on the air and I'm like, oh my God, Baker Mayfield has thrown 39 touchdown passes, right? And he's had it 2 or 3 on the ground. So 42, it's a monster season. But people are going to look at the picks. I'm sorry. They're going to look at the picks and they're also going to look at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, you guys got to be fair. I'm sorry. Gas Pump Guy, I'm sorry for you Tampa Bay fans down there in Southwest Florida. It's a crappy division, man. And I'm not saying you should get punished because you play in a weak division, but Atlanta stinks, the Saints stink, and Carolina stinks. And I know where you're going. Oh, hold on, Q. What about the AFC East? I totally get it. But Josh Allen, I would actually make more of a case for Joe Burrow over Baker Mayfield. I would make more of a case for Joe Burrow over the last month for Baker Mayfield. Jackson's going to have an opportunity because Baltimore needs that win. And I think Baltimore is absolutely going to steamroll. The Browns. They've mailed it in. I'm not saying tank, but they've mailed it in. Look, AFC North, there's a lot at stake between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. There really is. Because, listen, nobody wants to see Cincinnati get in. I mean, they made an interesting entering Week 18. You beat the Broncos at home. Week 17, you bring Denver within 1 game of them and the Dolphins. Cincinnati can't get in if they beat Pittsburgh. Denver is going to control their wild card race. They need a win over the Chiefs and they're resting starters and they're in. Miami needs help. Cincinnati needs help. They have to beat the Steelers and have both Denver and Miami lose to qualify for the postseason. Pittsburgh and the Chargers are in that battle for number 5. So the Steelers own a head-to-head over the Chargers from week 3. Then you look at the fifth seed, number 5 seed. That's valuable because that comes, listen, you want that. You want to know why? That comes with a wild card round matchup against the Texans instead of the Ravens. So Baltimore, by all accounts, expected to clinch the AFC North title Saturday with a win over the Browns. So I think Baltimore and Lamar Jackson will have an opportunity to Pat's dad. 727-858-6650. See Vince's comment on the MVP conversation. Saquon, Lamar, and Josh are the only legitimate MVP candidates. Again, I disagree. I think Josh Allen is the MVP. I've said it enough, but I think you can make a very strong case for Joe Burrow if that team actually played some defense. Lamar Jackson, brilliant season. I'm going to pull up these numbers for you. So bear with me. And this kind of puts things in perspective when we make the argument of the MVP conversation, because it's a fascinating argument. It really is. But you also have to look at this through a different lens. Typically, the MVP in the NFL is reserved for what position? The quarterback position. Because the quarterback is pretty much touching the ball the most. They're driving the offense. They're the franchise, the face of the franchise. And that's why we always talk about the quarterback the most. So you have to go past the numbers and you also have to look at, all right, other side of the ball, team's defensive and/or lack thereof of defensive efficiency. You know, you have to look at surrounding cast. You have to look at consistency. You have to look at, okay, early on, who was out playing who? Was it Allen? Was it, Lamar? Did I beat this guy? Did we go on the road and beat them? The impressive wins, right? The impressive wins. Buffalo went on the road and they waxed the 49ers. Buffalo went on the road. I'm sorry. They beat the 49ers at home. They also beat Kansas City and gave them what? Their first loss. They also went on the road and beat the Lions. That's pretty damn impressive. Is it not? That's pretty damn impressive. I mean, if we're being fair, and Allen has had monster seasons like this, but Allen's never really taken over the landscape of the NFL. He hasn't really put the Bills on his back, and he's been able to do that. And you might look at the numbers, well, only 28, 29 touchdown passes. Look what he's done with his legs. Look at these games that he single-handedly has won. If Cincinnati had a defense and they were 10 wins, I would make a case for Burrow. Lamar Jackson, yes. Saquon, you'll pull from the pot, you'll get some votes, but ultimately it's a great offensive line. If you're going to tell me that Saquon should be in the MVP conversation, okay, because he broke 2,000 yards, then can I not give a vote for Derrick Henry? I mean, honestly, can I not give a vote for Derrick Henry? I mean, granted, Derrick Henry has 1,800 yards, Saquon has 2,000. Now, what if Derrick Henry has a monster game and gets 250-something odd yards? Now, there's the rub, the risk to reward, starting or sitting, right? Again, I don't know where you guys are getting this nonsense. 727-858-6650. Explain to me, please. Explain to me why you guys believe if you sit Saquon and you don't win the Super Bowl, then sitting him was a mistake. Any other season, if a player like this is rested, are we arguing this? Is it just because he's so close to breaking the record? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is the Eagle fan so set on this record that they're willing to, win the battle but lose the war? It's a calculated decision. It really is. If he goes out there and he gets hurt, you guys are going to absolutely destroy Nick Sirianni. I've had some people text in and message me saying it's a fireable offense. It's a fireable offense. I mean, do you guys really feel that way? I don't look at this where if they rest him, they're looking long-term, man. They're looking long-term. What does Vince have to say here before he's trying to aggravate me on a Friday? 727-858-6650. Lamar has more rushing yards and TDs. How can Allen win over him? Don't give me the Lamar has 2 argument, please. I don't care if Lamar Jackson won 3 MVPs, but I'm not a voter. And the voters, unfortunately, are going to look at that, and it's the old Michael Jordan, Karl Malone. Who's had the more explosive offense? Who has the better offense? Lamar Jackson and the Ravens or Buffalo and Josh Allen? Oh, wait. I mean, if we're going to play that game, let's play the game. If that's what you guys want to do, let's play that game. Because the last time I checked, you got an all-world friggin' running back in Henry. Do you not? You've got all-world wide receivers in Baltimore. Do you not? Lamar Jackson is a great player. He's a great player. He's deserving to be in the conversation. And if he wins it, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be mad. But don't come at me and sit there and start apples and oranges, man. Lamar Jackson has a stacked friggin' offense. You got Bateman, you got Flowers, you got one of the best tight ends in the NFL and Mark Andrews. And oh, by the way, you got Derrick Henry that's averaging 6 yards a carry. And he has, 14 rushing touchdowns? You're going to compare apples and oranges with me when it comes to Josh Allen and that offense? Josh Allen doesn't have that type of offense. Stop. He's carried this team. He has carried this team, period. Period. That's it. Like, again, I just can't have the argument with you guys today. 727-858-6650. It's not a fireable offense. 26 may never get the chance to break the record again. All right, so Eagles fans, I will ask you this before we hit the timeout, and then we bring up Jovan in a moment. Would you rather have, if Saquon Barkley plays, okay, we'll take a timeout, we'll bring Jovan in a second, but if Saquon Barkley plays and he breaks the record and you get bounced in the wild card, are we really going to sit here 10 years from now and talk about a 14-win season, Saquon breaking a record, but you lost in the wild card? Where is your focus going to be? Where's the focus going to be? Sorry, But at the end of the day, is you got bounced and you didn't win the Super Bowl. So stop with the nonsense. Stop pushing this narrative that if you rest starters and you lose, if you don't win the Super Bowl, it's a huge disappointment. No, if they go out and get waxed and they don't show up against Green Bay or don't show up against Tampa Bay or lose in a divisional round, it's because they got beat by a better team, not because they decided to sit a running back. Just stop with the nonsense. Seriously, stop. 727-858-6650. All right, quick timeout, just cranking up on a Friday. We will get back to your comments. Jovan Alford will join us on the other side. Keep it locked in. A What the Frig Football Friday of the Drive right here on SR 1029 FM The Game.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Don't forget to get social with us. Follow Q at Rich Q on Q. And now,
All right, welcome back
to Q.
It is 28 past the 4 o'clock. Oh, a little different split screen. Before we were low, and now all of a sudden, see, this is what happens when you're moving up the ladder, right? Well, that's exactly what happens as we welcome in our guy. And no bumper guy music. Oh my goodness. Don't worry. I know. Maybe Angel played it and I didn't hear it. I didn't refresh. That's okay, because I know what happens. He starts to get a little worked up on a Friday. But with that being said, we welcome in our good friend, Jovan Alford. And first and foremost, Happy New Year. Of course, Jovan works for Fansided, does a great stuff with betting and gambling. Also previous stops at DraftKings Nation, and of course, Metro, Philly Tribune, and Total Sports Live. How are you, brother? It's been a minute.
I know it's been a minute. Glad to be on always, talking football, which you can't believe we're at the end of the season now, about to go into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's absurd, right? I mean, and listen, my proclamation, some of my predictions were way off, i.e. the Eagles not making the playoffs, but the Jets not making the playoffs, Washington making the playoffs. I feel pretty good about those predictions. All right, let's get in. It seems to be the topic of conversation in Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley, just 101 yards needed to break Eric Dickerson's rushing record, single season rushing record, held for 40 years, right? Which is fascinating. Decide not to go down the rabbit hole as well. 16 games, Saquon 17. Well, hell, look at Jim Brown, look at O.J. Simpson in 14 games. But are you pro sit him, or were you on the fence of, hey man, I would love to see Saquon go out there and grab 101, get the record, then sit?
I'm probably at more the stage of just sit him, just given the fact of that. If he was able to get closer, and I know 101 is still very, like, not a hard number to get, but I feel like if he was at like 50 yards away, you could probably justify, like, all right, play him for a quarter or a half, and just, like you said, get him in, get him out, get all your starting offensive linemen in and out, boom, 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 end of the day. But I'm totally fine with them, sitting him, just because the amount of carries and the workload he's had. I think he's had a career high in carries this year. at 345
That's
and
right.
touches 378. So a lot of work for a team that had a bye in week 5. So you're looking at a team that had a bye in like October that haven't, had a chance to rest. So I'm totally okay with them sitting them and him getting rest and gearing up for the playoffs because they don't have the bye week, right? I think that also plays a factor in it too. If you did, or if you were in the running for the number 1 seed and had a chance to get it, then obviously you play them and you see what happened there. But you obviously, since you don't have that option to get the number 1 seeds, best sit them, get everybody healthy, because we saw what happened last year, right? I know totally 2 different teams.
Yep.
Same situation, get the Giants. They play the starters. AJ Brown injures his knee. Don't have him next week against Tampa, even though that Eagles team was pretty bad for, all intents and purposes. But you didn't have him. I think Hurts got injured in that game too with the finger. So it was just bad situation all around. And I don't think it was a tough situation for Nick Sirianni. He was there was no right answer publicly,
Okay, then with that being said, then are you buying into this notion that because you sit the starters, and I think it's more because they're resting Saquon this close to the record, if they don't win the Super Bowl, this will cost them if they don't win the Super Bowl, like more pressure on them. I just find that comment it just rubs me the wrong way, because every team has pressure to win in the NFL, especially when you go into the season with Super Bowl / playoff aspirations.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength with you. I don't feel like the two correlate with the record and Super Bowl aspirations. No, if you have those, and especially with them adding a guy like Saquon, the goal was already geared to get to the Super Bowl, let alone you win 10 straight games, you get the 13 wins, like you're setting the stage for that to happen. So I don't think those are two mutually things that should
Right.
Should be tied together, and not in the least.
And again, with the whole tanking, right? I mean, players are incentivized. And you probably know I was probably just having a fit watching the Giants beat the Colts, right? But then I started to laugh at the end because I get it, man. I mean, eventually you're going to win a game, right? Eventually you're going to show up and you're going to sell out, and it happens. But players are incentivized. Like, I feel as though we have to keep debunking this theory that there's tanking in football. Geno Smith has basically $2 million, $6 million kicker incentives. They've been eliminated. Is he not going to go out there and try to get 185 yards, 68 completion percentage, get 10 wins? Because that kicker, right, you're on film. So I'm not enamored. We'll talk a little bit about the draft in a moment, but I'm not as enamored with this whole theory that you go out there and you're purposely trying to throw games, guys get hurt. I don't buy it. I think players quit. I think there's an argument that
you pull the throttle back.
There you go. They mail it in a little bit. Right now, you look at Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's he'll get a series, so he'll keep his consecutive streaks, his start streak alive. And then you got Lamar Jackson. I think they light it up against Cleveland. You got Saquon sitting. You got a big game, Darnold, Jared Goff, Sunday night. Goff, maybe slip him in the conversation of MVP. Darnold, comeback player of the year. Then you have Joe Burrow, no defense, great offense. Here we go, trying to just will Cincinnati into the playoffs. Who's your MVP?
Oh, this is tough because I have this ongoing conversation with a Ravens fan like almost every week about
there you go.
this.
Go ahead. We're all ears.
Yeah. So for me, if I had to make my choice, I probably would go Lamar, just based off the way he's played. The way he's played quarterback this season has just been phenomenal, just from a passing aspect. I mean, they're almost 40 touchdown passes and less than 5 interceptions. Like that's
unheard
almost of. That's like Aaron Rodgers, right? A couple years ago when Aaron Rodgers did that, I think he had 38-5 or something like that in Green Bay. So to see Lamar do that as a passer and kind of we already knew he was a good passer, right? But breaking his career high, which was 36 as his second year, but that was like his first full year as a pro and able to do that. Granted, he has Derrick Henry in the backfield, but Derrick Henry's he's not helping him in the passing game. So see him take that next level as a passer and what he's been able to do. And I think we as fans, we get almost the effect of like, it's not like LeBron and Giannis. It is almost like LeBron and Giannis when it's like they can win it every year, right? Because you get so bored and enamored, like they just do things so easily. in their sleep, right? So if it was me, I would go with Lamar. But at the same time, I wouldn't be mad if Josh Allen did it, because what Josh Allen's been able to do, with not not a super great wide receiver core. I mean, obviously they added Amari Cooper, but he's not been like a huge player in that offense. He's kind of been like that total package type of quarterback, almost like Hurts when he was in the running for MVP a couple years ago. They just know how to get the job done.
Yeah, by the way, Joe Burrow has 4,600 yards and he has 42 touchdown passes and only 8 picks.
He's also been tremendous, and I think you said it earlier. You said it earlier in the show. If the Bengals could play some defense, like he has just as much as a right with. And Jamar Chase is having almost a tremendous year that any other year, if you didn't have a 2,000-yard running back, he's offensive player of the year.
Right. So I'm getting hammered because people think I'm con against Lamar. I mean, hell, I said the Jets should have went after Lamar Jackson before they signed to Goofball. You remember I kept screaming, or Washington, go after. He's a great, great player. Now, my counter to you is when you said Derrick Henry doesn't help him in the passing game. Well, you know this as well as I do. If the ground game going, it opens up everything. They got great wide receivers. They got maybe one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends in the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. And then I look at Allen. He doesn't have the weapons. He just doesn't. And I think because he's carried them in big spots, man. I mean, look at the games that they had to go on the road. Look at the games that they won, the Kansas City, beating Detroit. Those are monster efforts and monster wins. And listen, there's no way I'm going to sit here and take away what Lamar Jackson has done. I mean, he's had a ridiculous season. He's played just unbelievable, man. I mean, they had a shot earlier in the season to beat the Chiefs. They had the bad loss to the Raiders. Then they went on a run. The Browns loss was a fluke. The Steelers was a low-scoring game. It happens. I think Allen, it's just his time. It's just his year. I think he edges. Lamar, I mentioned to the viewing audience, I'm sure you heard, it's a quarterback-driven league. It's rare that running backs get it, because then I can make a case. What if Derrick Henry goes for 250 and he eclipses 2,000 yards?
Or what about Cooper Kupp a couple years ago getting the Triple Crown?
Right. That's right. Where, when you look at these games, and again, the whole notion of some of these players resting, obviously with Andy Reid, and he's done it in the past, sitting a lot of the starters for Kansas City, and someone out there wrote that Carson Wentz could be the next Sam Darnold next year, which I don't know. I don't know if they're from Denver,
slow down.
Just, Ginger Jesus. Let's just relax right there, right? As opposed to sexy Jesus, Tim Tebow, Ginger Jesus. But, these quarterbacks, the reclamation projects, right? Baker Mayfield finding a home. Jared Goff was a cast-off pretty much. They gave up on him with the Rams. MVP conversation. My Sam Darnold, slinging Sammy Darnold right now. I feel as though, and by the way, let me get on you for one thing. The Patriots stink. Can you come on the air and admit that I was right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know their offensive line was going to be that horrible.
Yeah, no. I hear you. I'm just messing with you. When you look at some of these quarterbacks right now, can Jovan refund my Niner bet from last Super Bowl? I mean, I guess when with DK, I mean, can he put in for that? Can you reimburse him for the Niner bet?
I wish I could. Trust me. I mean, they should have won that Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan.
Hey, there you go. Right there you go. When you look at the reclamation projects, are you shocked at what Darnold's doing, or was it, he just needed the right coaching and be in the right spot?
I'm a little bit shocked because obviously his Jets tenure was just, it is what it is. And then obviously he went to Carolina, but there was only so much you could take away from Carolina. With the same thing with Baker Mayfield, there was only so much you could take away, and both of them then go to spots where they kind of like get fixed and kind of get their skills back in order, with McVay for Baker and then Darnold with Shanahan. I'm surprised. I don't think none of us saw that, especially because all the reports out of camp, you kind of thought it was just going to be that battle between him and McCarthy. But Darnold was obviously having that lead over McCarthy, and then McCarthy gets hurt, and then Darnold just blows up in an offense, in a system. And I think having the right coach and O'Connell, who obviously did good things with Kirk Cousins, right? And he's kind of showing like he can do it, with Sam Darnold. So I'm definitely impressed by him. I mean, if you're in Minnesota, this is a very interesting spot to be in, given that you have a kid that you drafted in the first round and Darnold, you're going to have to make a financial decision with, but it's not a bad decision because you hope that he can build off of this and continue to play well, because he's
Lights out.
playing like he's playing like we thought he would have played coming out of USC.
Yeah, listen, he saw the ghost with the Jets, got injured to mono, and then you think about this, him and Baker Mayfield were with Carolina a couple years ago,
Yep.
right? Mayfield, fascinating season. He's earned it. Good for him. He's a gamer. And then Darnold, I believe he's earned a long-term contract with Minnesota. Now you got another backup. You got Daniel Jones on the roster. You got McCarthy coming back as well. There's talk maybe you're going to try. I don't see that happening because people believe the kid was going to be the top quarterback drafted before he got hurt. But it is just, it's, hey, man, you got Trent Green goes down. We're going to rally around Kurt, and here we go. Now, the difference was we didn't know what Kurt Warner was.
Exactly.
We saw Darnold, starting 50, 60 something odd games. I look at this game Sunday night, and even from a gambling standpoint, with that line 2.5, 3, we know the secondary of Detroit is really shaky. So Minnesota is going to put up 24-28, which tells me Dan Campbell, every opportunity to match him punch for punch, he's going to go for a lot of fourth downs. If they don't get these fourth downs, they're not winning that game.
Yeah, that Lions defense has taken a huge beating the last few weeks. Obviously, even the pass rush is not as explosive, and that's something obviously that Green Bay learned the hard way last week when going up in Minnesota. They didn't have that pass rush, and if you allow Sam Darnold to sit back, it's going to be a long game for you. So I agree with you. I think that line is screaming, Minnesota, and Dan Campbell, like you said, he's going to force it. He's going to, and I think that might end up biting him either in this game or potentially in the playoffs, because he's definitely more of a risk taker that doesn't really get called on the carpet for being gung ho, go for it on fourth down. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you go back to the NFC Championship game. Great call on fourth down, poorly executed. Wrong wide receiver, right? That play been drawn up for a more polished player at that moment. Do you think Washington can make some noise here, or they, did they arrive a year early?
Overall, I think they did arrive a year early, and that's credit to Jaden Daniels and Kingsbury, what they were able to do on offense. Depending on the matchup, I think they could make that wild card game very sweaty. Like if they were to play the Eagles, I'd be very worried if I was the Eagles, because division games in the playoffs can go any type of way. But with them potentially having to travel out to the Rams, I think that's going to be a very good game for them, and I think it's going to test a lot of wits, between what can Dan Quinn's defense get pressure on Stafford, and Stafford going against that defense. We saw that defense, last week. Penix was able to make some throws, and those wide receivers were able to get open. Now imagine having to go up against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, coming off of a week rest in a playoff matchup. That's tough.
How about out of the AFC, if I were to give you two teams, who would I want to say, look, I don't think anyone wants to see Cincinnati in if you're Kansas City, Buffalo, right, or Baltimore. But how about the Chargers and or Denver? I mean, look, the line right now, Denver's 10.5. It's because Kansas City's resting every one of their mother's mother and their mother's mother's mother. So Denver should basically waltz in and get the win. If Denver can't win at home against Kansas City's backups, they don't deserve to make the playoffs. But again, Sean Payton, rookie quarterback, right? Welcome back Harbaugh, and you got a veteran quarterback. Like, it's worked with those two teams respectively. Out of the AFC, give me a sleeper team.
Ooh, sleeper team out the AFC. I mean, if Pittsburgh had another wide receiver, then I would say Pittsburgh, but their offense is just not good passing game wise. I think the Chargers could be right, because I think in the playoffs you need to have a solid defense and you need to have a running game, and they have that, right? J.K. Dobbins is healthy. He looked really good in his return last week. Granted, against the Patriots, that's nothing special, but he was able to move the chains. I think he averaged 4 yards a carry in the game, had a touchdown. I think it's the Chargers, because you're looking what they're doing offensively. They don't make the game too overcomplicated for Justin Herbert. It's run the ball, get the ball to Lad McConkey, Quentin Johnson here, Josh Palmer there, but they're really fundamentally run the football, get in the manageable second and third downs, and then that defense, you're hoping that they can just create some turnovers. Like, they got some guys on their defense, Khalil Mack, Bosa, Derwin James, the rookie Tahib Still, he's been outstanding, this season in the secondary for him as well. So I think that's a team that could give a team some issues just because of what they have. They can run the ball, they can play defense, they got the veteran head coach, like you said, and they got Herbert, who has that playoff game experience under his belt.
4:46 on the East Coast on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Angel Martinez behind the glass on this 3rd of January, 2025, powered by our good friends over at Zen Auto Concepts. Fresh roasted coffee. You'll see the link in the YouTube show notes as well. You can use the promo code BYP20 for a savings on a fresh cup. Because I drink a ton of coffee from all the spots
Right.
with me, but are you a restaurant or diner guy?
More a restaurant.
Oh, okay. But you'll eat at a diner, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know the most consistently said phrase at a diner?
No. What is it?
Top you off, hun.
Yeah.
All right, coaching carousel. Let's start with New York real quick. I guess there's these reports, the Jets and Mike Vrabel, there's a mutual interest, right? They're set to interview, or
I think they interviewed him, right?
Or they already did.
I think they did.
They already did. Pardon me. They already did today at the facility. So here's the risk to reward, right? Because you know this. If you're a first-time head coach and you flame out, you'll get one more shot, and then that's it.
Yep.
I mean, think about it. Adam Gase, perfect example, right? Got one, boom, second, see ya. Not going to get another job there. So if you're Mike Vrabel, do you sit there and say, what's the more appealing destination? Chicago, young quarterback, bad franchise, but yet storied franchise, or the Jets, and we don't know what we're going to do with our quarterback position?
For me, that's tough. I would say for Vrabel, I would be, if I was Vrabel, I would probably take Chicago just because you do have a young quarterback to work with. I know there's a lot of stuff happening in that front off in that Chicago leadership thing with Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren, kind of not overstepping, but kind of taking more of a presence in that situation. But that's not as horrible to deal with than dealing with Woody Johnson, and the Jets still don't have a GM. Right now, you don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do, even though Aaron Rodgers is kind of playing it as, this could be his last hoorah, but you still don't know, right? You don't know what's going to happen offensively, with that team. Defensively, they got guys, but it's a lot of what are you going to do, for that. I think if you're Vrabel, I think your best chance is to try to go into Chicago, kind of help them, get them back into the playoffs. I think for their fan base, I think they'll be happy with, okay, we got a competent head coach that, helping rebuild the culture and that can, get us back, at least to the playoffs, right? I don't think there will be aspirations like we bring Vrabel in and he's going to take us to the Super Bowl. Like, no, I think for that fan base, they'll just be happy to have an adult in the room and somebody that knows, like, hey, they're not going to look, dumb doing certain things like Matt Eberflus did, like towards the end of his.
But the difference is, I feel as though, like, even with the Giants and the Jets, the quarterback position is so in flux. You don't know the direction of the franchise, right? Aaron Rodgers is done. I think Sunday is last game. He gets his 500 touchdown toss. Then he goes and smokes and jokes in the whale sperm and the Hayanaska, whatever the hell it is, Waka Waka, and he just goes and he does what he needs to do. The Jets don't want him back. I mean, you go on McAfee and you got Adams, creeping behind you. Here we go, Super Bowl. They've done nothing. No. It's been a colossal failure. So Aaron Rodgers aside, I'll tell you, you might start to think of some packages now. Maybe you go out and you try to get a Ben Johnson or a Brian Flores. Maybe you toss more money at a Sam Darnold, or you get a bridge quarterback in Justin Fields. I just think I went through it. The Patriots seem they're going to have patience with Mayo. And okay, I think Doug Peterson's out. at
Yeah.
Jacksonville. The Saints will need a head coach.
Yep.
Atlanta's got some issues. I think we can agree. Atlanta's got some issues with the clock management and that head coach. We've kind of known that for years. Carolina's going to get a pass. The Giants, I don't know what Mara's going to
Right.
do. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. Same way.
I don't know what Mara's going to do with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. Like, you back me in a corner. I'm ready to move on. But then I went back and I looked at it and said, okay, objectively, rationally, now you're talking 5 head coaches in 8 years. That's what Washington used to do, or the Jets used to do, or Cleveland or Tampa Bay back in the. I don't want my franchise doing that. And then, I'm trying to think of some other teams out there. What if the Bills lose in a divisional round? Is McDermott out?
I think that seat will be pretty hot, depending on how they lose in that divisional round, or shoot, even if they don't get past to the divisional round, then you could have that conversation, based off of, you say, if Allen becomes the MVP, then it's gonna be like you couldn't win with the MVP caliber quarterback. So it's going to be a lot of interesting questions, I think, for a lot of these head coaches that are going into the playoffs, and how their team finishes will kind of dictate, what maybe their, future is for the carousel.
Yeah. Any game or games that you do like? I know it's kind of a goofy kind of weekend, right? With some of these
Very
lines.
goofy.
I mean, I don't. So I've been trying to tell people, look, these are the type of games where you're probably going to look at first half totals, team totals, maybe first half lines. I mean, you trust Buffalo and their backups on the road against the Patriots. The Patriots, they lose, they lock up the number 1 seed. Indianapolis, Jacksonville. I'm not touching the Eagles, Giants. The game, if I were to do anything right now, 2 games, Minnesota and Detroit, and Miami and the Jets, because I think the Jets are just a dead team walking. I really do.
Yeah, and Miami technically still has something, to tell, something to play for, and they're still going to want to perform. Snoop Huntley might get the start, I think, for the Dolphins. So he's going to be stepping into a situation where he has a lot to prove, because he's looking to be a quarterback maybe somewhere else.
That's right.
Or keeping that backup role in there. So I'm kind of in the same thinking with you. That's where I would lean at those 2 games, because everything else is just like really in flux, and you don't know, because guys might play a series and then they're done. So then you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, you're SOL, as we like to say. He is Jovan Alford, never shit out of luck. At Jovan 10 fan cited, FTN bets, and of course Total Sports Live. Kind enough, look at that, to start us off in 2025, which means we will start getting you on doing our weekly stuff as always. Great insight. Appreciate you jumping on board. I see, it's not like it typically, sometimes you come on and we have that little longer beard. Is this a new you for 2025? You just clean it up a little bit, slice and dice.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know.
I mean, I got to tell you, I won't even get into the NBA with that nonsense and just great.
That's a whole nother segment.
We'll do player props next week. I promise you on that, but always appreciate you jumping on board, brother. And glad to have you back in the saddle with me. Thank you.
For sure. I have a good one.
All right. You got it. My guy, Jovan Alford. All right. We got to take a quick time out. 4:54. Got to get some reads in as well. Don't forget, we are powered by our good friends. Hey, there we are at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. They're open 7 days a week for all your used sports equipment and more, and fresh roasted coffee. Angels talked about it. I've talked about it. Fresh roasted coffee, the coffee of choice on the Drive with Q, as well as Back Your Play. 20% off if you use the promo code BYP20. Johnny Mack reporting that Eagles coach Nick Sirianni said Jalen Hurts is progressing through the concussion protocol, would not offer any additional details when pressed. All right, we'll close out hour number 1. We'll take you up to 6. Your calls, text on the other side, 727-858-6650. Keep it locked in on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q, coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the SR 1029 The Game studios. Of course, Southwest Florida's newest game in town.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can.
making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you. You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Call or text the show at 727-858-6650. Now, back to Q.
Hey, there's that point. There you go. We cue it up just like that as we're fast approaching the 5 o'clock hour, 60 in the books. Great engagement from you guys. Always appreciate it. 727-858-6650. I miss Bumper Guy. I don't miss Eye on TV voice. I think we've eliminated that for 2025. I think, X-Man, you will be happy to know that voice is no longer associated with the drive with Q, let alone SR 1029. The game. We're hoping to pop up Lloyd Vance sometime in the 5 o'clock hour. So MVP conversation, it's on the table with you guys as well. Sleepers, dark horses coming out of the AFC, NFC respectively. Oh, by the way, has anyone, and I'm sure, obviously you guys have, but what have you guys made thus far of college football playoff and just, 2 games where 2 teams just decided to not show up. And then obviously what transpired the other night in the Texas-Arizona State game, which I talked about ad nauseum last night, which a lot of people were heated, the targeting and no targeting. If this is the NFL and it cost a team a playoff game, we would be going absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. These games, the SEC, done, dead, see ya. Did you watch? These games are just, ugh. They really are. Notre Dame, I'll give you credit. I'm going to give you credit. You guys know I don't like Notre Dame. Can't stand Notre Dame. But Notre Dame showed you there's the pro and the con of what we saw in that game. Notre Dame really dug into the transfer portal, and it worked. Georgia dug into the transfer portal, and it didn't work. And that was the difference yesterday. And I think you have a coach that's teetering on elite. That'll be a very interesting, for me, it's a lesser of 2 evils because I can't stand Penn State either after everything that transpired with Paterno and Sandusky. So, can I take a mulligan on that game? I'll watch, but the interest level, can we have a tie consistently with those teams? Probably not. And then conversely, Ohio State. Ohio State turned around, and not only did they just wax a disinterested Tennessee team, they put up 42. The game against Oregon wasn't even close. See, everyone's going to now debate the pros and, again, the cons of, how the playoff series or the college football playoff series and the seedings, and everyone's going to sit there and they're going to, we're going to have this argument. Is it flawed? Right? I mean, Notre Dame shut down Georgia. They shut down Georgia. The game, they just beat them up in the trenches. Just beat them up in the trenches, right? And now the argument is, okay, did the right teams get in? Right? Are we biased towards one conference over another conference? Well, this is why you should have let so-and-so in. Man, again, all of it, Monday morning quarterbacking. And some of these quarterfinal blowouts were predicted. They were predicted. Notre Dame didn't blow out Georgia, but they beat them up. Ohio State blew out, quack, quack, quack. Absolutely just blew them out. So we got 4 left, and then obviously an opportunity for the national championship. 5 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. 60 in the book, 60 to play with on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Angel Martinez behind the glass. 727-858-6650. Let me get to some Facebook comments as well. Joe D. checking in on Summers Point. Q, I listened to you last night, and you were just rambling on about the MVP conversation. It does seem you're slating Lamar Jackson. Personally, I give the vote to Jackson over Allen. I'm not... Where did anyone hear me say I'm slighting Lamar Jackson? I think I've literally praised Lamar Jackson. I mean, just constantly, Kevin in North Jersey. Q, do you really believe this is Rodgers' last game? If that's the case, he's going to sling it 50 times. Who would be the best coaching candidate to take over as head coach for the New York Jets? Kevin is a big-time Gang Green fan. I think Aaron Rodgers is done. I think that's it for Aaron Rodgers. Sunday, I believe, will be the last snaps of Aaron Rodgers' career. And there's a couple reasons I believe that. I think the wear and tear, right? The physical wear and tear of his body, which he's had to endure over the last several years, not to mention coming off an injury. He goes down 4 snaps in, 4 offensive snaps in the last season. And I also believe when you're trying to back your guys, and obviously Hackett was not the right move. You bring in Lazard, you bring in Adams. You have some of these comments where, Rodgers is blaming wide receivers for dropping balls, doing the Marino with the hand when Williams can't catch a ball. And then Williams goes and has a wonderful game-winning touchdown catch a week later for Pittsburgh. And now he's going to be in the playoffs. And Aaron Rodgers is going to be sitting home watching Mike Williams, talking about young receivers not being on the page with Garrett Wilson, not being on the page with Robert Saleh, not being on the page with Joe Douglas. It has been a colossal failure from top to bottom with the New York Jets. A colossal failure. And now they've got egg on their face and they want to wipe their hands clean, free of Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers' body is starting to betray him, and he's not the same quarterback. And quite frankly, do you want the baggage? Do you want to take a flyer on Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. I think he's done after Sunday. A couple minutes past 5 o'clock hour. This is Sports Radio 1029 FM, The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town, part of Coastal Sports Network. It's a Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Angel Martinez behind the glass. And let us welcome in Angel's. You got a little soup, soup and a sandwich right there, woofing it down. We welcome in our good friend, his own show, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Don in the hat, new year, headset on, beer trimmed, playoff proclamation. Here we come.
What's up, Q?
Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year.
Let's kind of continue to where I was just talking on this Aaron Rodgers conversation. I believe Sunday will be his final NFL game. I don't think a team, I'm sure there's a GM dumb enough to want to take a shot with him, but I just think the baggage, he's not going to come in and mentor any type of young quarterback. I think it's been a failure from top to bottom. Who do you blame for the Jets' mess?
Well, It probably had to be Woody Johnson. He signed off on all this, and he decided, Aaron Rodgers' way to go. I know it was, 2023 season. That was their big push to get him. And he's already gotten rid of Salah. He's got rid of Douglas. He put some of it on them, and you can also put it on just Rodgers himself because he dictated this whole situation, played junior GM, got the guys that he wanted, got them signed, and it was a colossal failure from top to bottom. So, Nathaniel Hackett, you can throw him in there as well. But definitely, I do agree with you that Rodgers will not be back with them. Yes, he's under contract going into next season, but I think he'll probably do it on his own, to be honest with the Q. I think he knows this is it.
You think a team out there would want to bring him in if maybe they thought, okay, we can get a couple fannies in the seats. We know this guy's not going to mentor anyone. Can we squeeze one more good year of football left out of him?
Yeah, there's always an owner that thinks and a coach they think they can fix a bad situation, bad player, and give them an opportunity. But it would have to be a team that's really downtrodden. They need a quarterback badly, and then Rodgers have to go in and sell himself. Say, look, I know the tape shows that I've kind of digressed, but I still have some gas left in the tank. And I always throw out the Tennessee Titans. They are a quarterback needy team, but I think they'll be picking high enough in the draft that they will want to go with the college kid.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to weigh the risk to reward. And this is something you and I talked about. I just look at, again, the misread of the room. They don't want him back. He's older, slower. He's injury prone. I think there's a lot that they're going to weigh in the offseason. And I don't know if a team really wants to make that type of splash and deal with that kind of distraction, if you will. As for the games, this narrative in your backyard in Philadelphia, the sitting of the Saquon Barkley and the resting the starters. All I've heard was, and for the new audience listening now at 5:00, all I heard was, if you rest Saquon and the starters and you lose the Super Bowl, it was a colossal mistake to rest these guys. Or now there's more pressure on the Philadelphia Eagles because you're resting the starters to make a deep run in the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. I just have to debunk that whole mindset, those comments, those opinions and theories, because one has nothing to do with the other. I think in any other year, if Jalen Hurts tweaked an ankle and you want to rest him, A.J. Brown pulled a hamstring, you want to rest him, Saquon Barkley in a meaningless game, too many carries, you want to rest him. Are we going to have the same conversation? I think the parallel is he's only 101 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's record. So play him, right? Make it that special season. But ultimately, if he gets hurt or if he doesn't break the record and you don't win the Super Bowl, or he breaks the record and you lose the Super Bowl, no one's talking about the record at all. I feel as though there's just this, there's this cloudiness when it comes to this topic. And I'm wondering, shed some light on it. Is it the right move by Sirianni? And is there more pressure on the Eagles to win it all because they're going to rest their starters?
Q, there's no pressure on the Eagles to win it all and everything. This is the norm around the National Football League. I'm getting alerts all the time about who's this week, who's going to be inactive, who's not playing, and all the smart coaches. And you see it. Andy Reid's considered the guru around, top coach in the National Football League. He's not playing any of his guys, and all the coaches are going to follow suit because the postseason, as you're talking about, is really what's most important to these teams. It was winning there. I know it's a record that the fans want him to get, but in the end, Q, you got to give him some rest. You got to get him ready for the games that count the most. And yes, it'd be nice for him to get that title, but in the end, I looked at the list, and most of those guys didn't. The only guy that really won when he broke that record and got 2,000 yards, except was Terrell Davis. He came very close in 1998, but all the other guys, they kind of, they got over 2,000 yards, but then their season was forgettable. You hate to say it that way, but they didn't win a championship.
No.
And people
Rams lost in the second round. Rams lost in the second round.
1984, they sure did.
They lost to the Giants. Yeah. Is the record any less like Dickerson? 16 games. O.J. Simpson behind the what was it? The electric company, right? 73. Right. That was 14 games. Like my argument the other day was the Miami Dolphins in 72 went undefeated. Okay. It was a 14-game season.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finished, obviously, perfect season. They won the Super Bowl. They beat Washington. They won it all. The New England Patriots went 16-0, right? So Miami 14-0 and finished with the 3 postseason wins to 17-0. Patriots went 16-0, but obviously lost Super Bowl 18-1. One doesn't diminish the other was my point. So I'm not going to look at Saquon, who amassed 2,000 yards in 16 games, and because now if he would have broke it, the counter argument for the pro old school Dickerson fans or OJ Simpson fans, well, he did it in 17 games. A feat is still a feat, is my point. It's still phenomenal what he was able to do. He's not putting up those numbers behind that Giants offensive line, but still a remarkable season.
Yeah, the numbers are great, remarkable season, but football's not like baseball. Everybody says I'm a know the historian of the game, and I look back at all this stuff. It's always baseball. Everybody talk about Babe Ruth's home run record and Roger Maris's 61.
Yep.
These are numbers that stick out. Any old school sportsman it rolls off their lips. 2105 does not roll off of people's lists as this venerable record that Eric Dickerson has, and you'll be remembered forever. Yeah, it's a nice record, single season thing. It'd be nice if Saquon was able to get it, but in the end, you look at some of the past players like a Barry Sanders. He decided, there's more important games to be played, more important things than a record that will eventually get broken.
Well, I think that's the rub, the risk to reward, right? Lose the battle, win the war. But I believe there's pressure on every team poised to make a playoff run. And I'll throw this out as ludicrous as it might sound. If the Eagles were to get bounced in a wild card divisional round, do they again have this conversation of, okay, we can't win with Nick Sirianni? Like, who's under more pressure this season going into the playoffs? Is it Jalen Hurts, Saquon, AJ, Devontae Smith, the line, the defense, or is it Nick Sirianni, the head coach, for his future with the Philadelphia Eagles?
If you're wrapping it up in terms of the Eagles, I just say it's Nick Sirianni because he needs that contract extension. Obviously, I think he's going to get it, and he's had such a successful record, and he works well for what the Eagles and what they want to do. But there's pressure on this entire unit. Everybody over and over has said, most talent on paper. Well, paper doesn't win everything, and losing that number one seed, I think, is a big deal. The road now is going to go through Detroit or Minnesota, and it's not going through Philadelphia. So they're going to have to go on the road and win some games and prove that they are a championship caliber team, particularly in the NFC. And it's going to be a fight. So a lot of pressure on him. And let's not forget, Jalen Hurts is still in concussion protocol. He has not been practicing. So, yeah, they should sit these guys and rest them and get them ready. And then you run about the rust factor, particularly for Jalen Hurts going into the wild card round.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just independent of each other. Like when you start to kind of mix in, and lump it all together. I mean, Andy Reid's going to rest his starters, right? I mean, it's basically a welcome mat for Denver now to make the playoffs. But Andy Reid understands they're an older team, they're a veteran team. They've logged a lot of miles, a lot of yardage. Mahomes, Kelsey, they're trying to get some players back. I mentioned this last night on the drive. I feel as though Kansas City is the most forgotten 15-1 team. Like, no one wants to see Cincinnati. It's got to be Baltimore and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Minnesota, Sam Darnold, Detroit and that offense and Dan Campbell and the Eagles and Hurts and Sake. Like, I feel as though we forget that, oh, by the way, this is a team that has won back-to-back and they're trying to make it a three-peat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because never been done back to back, three in a row, and they've won 15 games, 15-1, the only team in the National Football League, and you have to give them their flowers for that. And yes, it has not been pretty a lot of times, but we know in the National Football League, it's about stacking W's and moving forward, getting ready for the postseason. And I think that's what this team is doing. They're getting healthy at the right time. Obviously, they have the number one quarterback in the National Football League, which is a huge, leveler for this team. And then you got a defense that's playing really well too, holding opponents under 20 points or so. So this defense is one of the best in the National Football League, and they're getting ready for the playoffs. And the road's going to go through Kansas City with that Arrowhead Stadium crowd. So it's going to be tough, and definitely you cannot push that aside that they're a 15-win team. But as you said, they got to finish the job because I still remember Randall Cunningham's team with the Minnesota Vikings. Gary Anderson
Gary
missing the
Anderson.
kick. What were they, a 14-2 team? And no one ever remembers them because
No,
they
they were.
were
I think they were 15-1. I think
yeah,
they only lost. What was that? 1998, the Minnesota Vikings, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
when
think
Cunningham. Yeah, Cunningham came. They were 15-1.
okay. And then you had also Cam Newton's Carolina
That's right.
Panthers 15-1, and they got killed by Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. That's a really good point, man. And the game they lost, Minnesota game they lost was against Tampa Bay. I mean, they started the season 7-0, lost that game, and then they ripped off another 7 or 8 in a win in a row. And you're right. I mean, Gary Anderson, pretty much, you're going to ice the frigging game. And long and behold, AFC. It's cliche. You don't want to see this team. You don't want to see this team. You don't want to see this team, right? Cincinnati needs a lot of help, but again, I feel as though Buffalo and Baltimore, any of these teams now, you're still, as long as Kansas City wins, right? You get the bye, you get the division round, then you're hosting an AFC championship. You still got to beat the big boy. And if I were to say Buffalo, Baltimore, I think that's where it stops in the AFC. Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City. I mean, can Denver, can the Chargers, can they go on the road and beat Kansas City? Can Buffalo go on? Do you feel confident where Baltimore with the ground attack and Henry and Lamar and the Bills with Josh Allen, can they go on the road and beat Kansas City if they had to? If Kansas City gets bounced, it's another story. But are they built to go on the road and beat Kansas City?
At this point, Q, I had to say they've got to prove it. Their defense has
Wow.
had problems stopping people all season in terms of scoring, and yeah, Hamilton's starting to play a lot better, and Owe and Queen and the rest of those guys on that defense are doing a great job flying around. But Baltimore, it's proven. So Lamar's got to be able to go on the road, and he just hasn't done it in the past in the playoffs, winning a lot of games. So I do agree with you that it's probably Buffalo going into Kansas City. That's a game everybody wants to see, and we're going to see if they're going to be able to get it done. The other contenders in the AFC, Houston, Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
Chargers, Denver, they're all flawed. And you're right. Cincinnati is playing some great ball at this time, but as we said, they started 0-3. They lost that opener to the Patriots, so they're kicking themselves in the butt, and their high-scoring offense is probably not going to make it because I just don't see Denver losing that game to Kansas City. But yeah, there's not. It's very top heavy in the AFC, and Baltimore. It's a prove it situation. Even though they do have Derrick Henry and a lot of pieces that have had a great season this season.
Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd does a great job as his Monday show. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on SR 1029 FM The Game joins me on Back Your Play and The Drive as well. Angel Martinez behind the glass. I don't know if Angel was that soup you were chugging down there before there, Angel? You see, he's looking down, his head. Now he pops up. We're not going to get the little shot of the incredible shrinking Hermano. Your microphone on? Was that soup? You were donning a little soup? Yeah, there's a story behind it. I knew it. I just wanted a yes or no answer, but go ahead. What do you have, little chunkies?
No, there you go.
Yeah. Usually you have that, a little hot toddy on a cold day. You don't have to worry about that in friggin' Tampa. Meanwhile, Lloyd and I are freezing our
Yeah,
asses
it's
off.
snowing up here, man.
Oh, are you kidding? Oh, man. Sunday night, Minnesota and Detroit. Here's my breakdown, right? Detroit secondary stinks. Minnesota's going to put up about 30. This game is going to come down to if the Lions can convert all these fourth downs, because you're not kicking field goals to beat Minnesota. You need 7 if you're Dan Campbell. And the line right now, 2.5. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I've been back and forth on this one, but I watched both these teams a lot last week, and the way the Lions are playing, particularly Gibbs, and let's not forget their offensive line with Sewell and the rest of those guys. They're one of the best in the league. So I think yes, it may be a scoring match, but you got to think Goff is going to play better in this game. And Darnold, I've been all season I've been beating him up, waiting for the other shoe to drop for him to make some mistakes. I've been calling him this season's Case Keenum, but he's put up some great numbers. We'll see if he's able to do this again. But I just think the Lions at home is such an advantage. Yes, they have some injuries, but in their secondary, they have some playmakers, some guys that have getting interceptions and then they're turning it into points. So Campbell, it's going to be interesting. Does he go for it all the time on
He's gonna.
third down, fourth down at the
He's
goal
gonna.
line? He's got to be smart in this situations and the defense. Aaron Glenn's defense has got to get after Darnold, make him uncomfortable because that offensive line, O'Neal and the guys up front for the Vikings, they can be had with some pressure. But it's going to be interesting, as you said, just a lot of people beating up on that Detroit defense.
I feel though, to kind of counter one of your points and make an argument in that game, I feel as though that if Detroit doesn't get home field advantage, they're in trouble, right? Because, you can mask an ugly secondary at times with a pass rush. Well, they lost that. They can put up a lot of points. They have to have the benefit of playing at home with that crowd noise. Minnesota, I can see Minnesota going on the road and beating any team in the NFC. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop with Sam Darnold. You're waiting for the ghost to throw off the back foot. I don't believe you're seeing that or you're going to see it because I believe those bad habits have been exercised because of the head coach.
Yeah, and he has played great this season. And the thing is, Justin Jefferson, who's going to cover him? And that's going to be huge. And the Lions have had problems all season with particularly pass interference with Arnold and some of those guys in that secondary. So that's going to be a tough assignment. The Vikings, this is a prove-it game. They have to come in there and show that they're the number one seed and take it from them because, as you said, everybody's just kind of saying, oh, they're the Vikings. It's a nice story and they're overachieving. But they are a dangerous team and they can put up some points. But Brian Flores, his defense has got to dial up some pressure, make Goff uncomfortable because, Goff will turn the football over when he's uncomfortable as well. So going to be a chess match out there.
Is Doug Peterson coaching his last game in Jacksonville on Sunday?
He definitely is, and Shad Khan he's been patient, more patient than any other owners out there. But I think the writing's on the wall. This Jacksonville team is just underachieved, and the roster's a mess. And Trevor Lawrence he said enough's enough, and he decided I have a shoulder injury, I'm going to shut it down. So there's going to be some new changes there, new regime, and Peterson will probably be out.
Cleveland, obviously Watson, Winston. They had that contract. They had to restructure a little bit with Deshaun Watson because obviously all the money is guaranteed. It's one of the worst contracts in the history of professional sports. You got Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We see Kirk Cousins was benched in Atlanta. Clock management, major issue. Can you see Cleveland, even though Atlanta broke the bank again for Kirk Cousins, can you see Kirk Cousins with the Browns? Can you see Kirk Cousins out of Atlanta after this season?
Yeah, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be cut, probably around March or so when the cap hit won't be.
Wow.
It's going to be a bad cap hit, but I just don't think they're going to pay that much money for a backup there. It's clearly Penix that's the future for them. Raheem Morris and Fontenot, the general manager down there, are ready to move in a different direction. And I think Kirk Cousins will end up somewhere else because as he's alluding to, Q, he's that good soldier quarterback. He's not going to make a lot of waves in the locker room, and maybe he can be a bridge guy. And we'll see which team he kind of lands with. The Browns, though, crazy enough, they all have gotten the vote of confidence. So Stefanski, Andrew Barry, their GM, and as you said, they're bringing Watson back as well. So I guess they're content just riding out that mess there.
Talking trash, Patty chimes in on the text message board. I don't understand the big deal about Barkley going for the record. It's the freaking Giants, for crying out loud. He'll break the record in the first quarter. Let him go for it. I guess, again, the argument has been made, the risk to reward, right? He pulled himself out of the first game against the Giants. And I know the little subtle shot there by Patty for, taking a shot at my Giants. And then he probably could have got another 40 or 50 against Dallas when they were routing him. So risk to reward, right? Can you see both sides of it? You got a lot of Eagles friends and family. Do they want to see Saquon go out there? Did they want to see Saquon go out there? If he goes out there, that means the offensive line has to go out there, the starters, right? So you are putting a lot of players, again, at risk. Are we now just too soft and worried about injuries, or is this, I got to save them, I got to save these bullets in the chamber come playoff time?
Yeah, it's a team situation, Q. And as you said, there's 11 guys on offense, and I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, Stoutland can get anybody those yards." No, those backup linemen are not ready to play. And let's not forget the Giants. Yes, they're one of the worst teams in the National Football League, but they are professionals. They're going to go out there and try, and they're not just going to hand him the record. So he needs 101 yards, and it was a good team decision that they have to move forward, get ready for the playoffs. And that's what I've been telling all my Eagles fans, friends, and family. Look, the record's just not that important. Wouldn't you rather win your second Super Bowl in Eagles history, get this guy ready, and then go from there? So I know it's like, oh, come on, he's so close, give him a chance. But in the end, as I said, the record really is not going to matter. It's more about team success.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Eagle fan, they kind of want it all, right? They do. Does
Yeah, and
Bucky break the
they're
record
damned if
faster
they
than
do,
me?
damned if they don't. Q, if they play him and something, God forbid, happens, he goes there and pulls a
Right, but
hamstring,
what I'm saying is the
you know.
perfect scenario is, he breaks the record, you lose to the Giants, you have the Giants drop to 8, he breaks the record against his former team, and then you have this great march and run in the Super Bowl. And see, the older football fans and the talking heads, a lot of people will make the argument, go out there and break the record. Records are made to be broken. It's different, right? We're seeing it in basketball, triple-double, you're going to play. Baseball, you need to go 2 out of 3, keep that average over 336, you're going to play. In football, because I think it's such a violent sport, people look at it as, man, you don't want to lose him come playoff time.
Right.
You
And
don't.
yeah, and you look at the passing touchdown record, Q. Peyton Manning set that, I believe it's 55, and that was the year they lost to Seattle in the Super Bowl. So he got that,
but
got
does
all
one
those
have anything to
records,
do
and
with
they
the
didn't win.
other? But does
No, it
one
didn't. It's just happenstance. You know what I mean? But people don't remember that the record. They just know that, okay, Seattle beat them in the playoffs. Yeah, it was a great season, a memorable one, and it's crazy how the next year Manning was played horrible, and they were able to win it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
but don't you? In my gut, if this, and we don't know how fast that suit went down with Angel. In my gut, I look at it like this: if it's there for you, and my personality is, and you know how I am, I would want to stick it up there. You know what? Now, granted, it's the Giants. You feel there was a disservice. You were disrespected. Yada yada yada, the whole 9 yards. You're 101 yards away. I would have. This is just me. This is just me. Yo, man, you know what? This is a team. We got to this point because of you, but also the offensive line, right? Everything worked hand in hand. We want to be part of history. You can get this. And honestly, to Patty's point, you probably can go get it in the first quarter. I mean, did you see last weekend? Taylor ran all over the Giants. Even if they sell out, he's going to break a couple, get the record, be up by 17, and then sit. My whole this conundrum, this where I get just so frustrated is the minority of the fan base thinks because you're resting him, and now all of a sudden you're resting him and the starters, and if you don't win the Super Bowl, it's because you rested him. That's not accurate. It's not, but I would have liked to have saw him. Look, if it's me and he's playing for the Colts or the Titans, break it. Part of me is like, oh, you're going to do it against my friggin' Giants, right? And I got to deal with it because they didn't re-sign him. They should have traded him. But there's also this part of me where the kid has had such a special season. Let him go for broke and break the record. You give him a quarter plus. What happens next week, the first friggin' carry in the wild card game, God forbid, he gets hurt. You can get hurt on any play in the NFL. Why are we bubble wrapping these guys? Geno Smith is playing for incentives. Geno Smith has $6 million on the line. Geno Smith's going out there in a meaningless game because he's incentivized. Saquon Barkley can basically hold the single season rushing record in the NFL that will stand maybe for another 40 years. And now what's happening is the fan base, the offensive line, and Saquon, we're not allowing that to transpire. We're taking that away from him. That's my counter argument to stuff. And again, it pains me to actually say it because the last thing I want is this kid to play it against the Giants.
I get it. But I fall on the side like, look, everybody's
You're
ready for their
Switzerland in
guys.
this debate.
He shouldn't go for it. Rest him up. Get him ready for the playoffs. That's what matters. So, I feel bad. And I know for all the fans that want him to get it, but I kind of knew this was coming. And Sirianni's going to have to deal with it. And we'll see how it turns out.
All right. Any other game or two that kind of stand out that's wetting your whistle on a Sunday or a Saturday?
I was looking at a couple of these. Yeah, the Seahawks at the Rams. I know it doesn't have any meaning, but the Seahawks can get to 10 wins. And the Rams, I think they may be resting people too, but that'll be a good situation. As you said, can Geno get those incentives, play in the game? So I'm going to be watching that one. Let's not forget New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to take care of business and win that one big. The line is Tampa Bay minus 13. So I think they're going to try to cover that number and then get Mike Evans. You talk about numbers. We want to get Mike Evans at 85 yards so he can get his 1,000 for, I think, 11 straight season. So a couple games that I have my eyes on. Of course, we'll all be watching that Vikings-Lions game, and I'm going with the Lions.
This is a game where if they do not convert their fourth downs, I can see Minnesota winning this game. I can see Minnesota winning this game by 10.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to kicker. So, the Vikings kicking situation is a little shaky though, too. So keep an eye on that. Their kickers missed a lot of big kicks, and Bates done a pretty good job for the Lions, and he has more long range ability. Indoor games, so you don't really have to worry about that. But I think Goff and Gibbs are going to do a nice job. And don't forget about Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's really coming along, and the Vikings, they've had problems stopping people as well in terms of their secondary.
Yeah, no. 100% on that. All right. We like to agree to disagree. We'll do BYP over the weekend. Little hot debate, maybe cool off that snow in the backyard. I can't imagine what's it coming down in buckets. Can
It's coming
down in buckets.
About a couple inches out there right now. Well, hopefully it'll, everybody will get through their commute safely, and we'll just go from there.
All right. Well, a lot of times, a couple inches is better than no inches, my friend. So,
oh Lord,
Eagles fan. You set me up. I got to knock it down. Eagles fans wish Dan Campbell was their coach this week. Go be aggressive. That's the thing. Go be aggressive. So, all right, brother. BYP tomorrow on a Saturday. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on a Monday, 8 o'clock, 8 to 9 on SR 1029, The Game. All right, my friend. Always appreciate you. We'll do it again soon.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, you got it. Yeah, listen, this argument, I get it, where everyone's kind of on the fence, but I just say, and it pains me, but the kid is on the cusp of history. The team to a man, we all know they want this. Let him go out there and break it, but nope. He's not going to get the shot. And, the pushback from some, and I ask you guys this, are we now, and this started years ago, but is the NFL starting to, and this is going to kill some of the viewers because some of you don't like when I talk NBA. I'm sorry. But are we now starting to get into, quote, load management when it comes to the NFL? Like in resting players? Because, again, a lot of these players are incentivized. They want to go out there and play. They want certain clauses to kick into their contract. And if you're not out there, how are you going to do it? There are NFL contract incentives in play for week 18. And just to give you just a couple tidbits, right? Now you tell me. So Kyler Murray, if you want to play the player prop, here you go. Over 50 rushing yards and 1 touchdown, because if he gets that, it's $750 incentive. Okay. Again, follow along with me on this and go back if you're missing it and watching on demand. Kyle Van Noy with a half a sack, 250,000 kicks in, right? Gazecki, the tight end, 3 receiving yards, even though you're not going to get that low as a player prop, 125 kicking in. Cortland Sutton, 82 yards away from making a $2 million bonus. There are incentive kickers. So this debunks the whole tanking nonsense, but it also should debunk, guys not wanting to play or guys resting. That's all I'm saying. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, listen, we know these players, when you're force feeding the ball to somebody, no, the FC's not going to get us. What, man, go away. We're waiting for your gentleman's club joke of the day, which, by the way, it's, 5:36, right? I mean, usually he starts off the show and then he bookends it when he closes it out with a joke. But there's incentives all over the place, man. Let me see here. Mike in North Jersey chiming in. Q, you're flat out wrong about Saquon Barkley having to go out there and break the record. You rest him up. God forbid if he gets injured, you're going to be the first one coming on the air Monday yapping and flapping your gums that they should fire Sirianni. Grow up. Grow up. That I need Mike to text in. What that reminded me of? That great scene of Wedding Crashers? You want to throw a Hail Mary. It's the first quarter. Grow up, Count Chocula. Right? What do you guys think? Would you have played Saquon? Right? One more madman outburst. And yes, that's exactly it, Gabe. Our guy Gabe from Critical. I agree. The madman just... Sometimes these guys are they're very loose cannons when they comment and text in, right? That's what they do. Uh-oh. We getting a dual screen?
It's the dual window.
Wait a second. Why are you on the right?
Well, that's because
this is controversy, man. I don't.
Because the host is on the left. See, if you were flipped it around, the host is on the left.
My left or your right?
Well, it would be.
This is very questionable. I'm a little nervous. I don't like change.
That's the way I do it. Every show, I always put the host on the left.
Yeah, but before you were.
Yeah, to your right. Correct. When I was the incredible shrinking hermano.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. You're no longer that. You're my equal now. Oh, yeah. No. New year, new size. That's what Trevor wants to know. What are we doing here? Oh, man. Equal pay scale and everything. Oh, my goodness.
Well, every time I hear about the always shrinking and shrinking, I figured now you get the full size.
So
I'm going to go back to shrinking.
The best is when Angel gets aggravated from my viewers or texters who get fed up that they can only get hashtag Windowgate. This is controversy. So let me just say there was a thought that the video was just dissipated. Like there was this conspiracy theory going on that your electricity has been out for 2 months down in Tampa. Listen.
All right.
Don't shoot the messenger. All I'm saying is there was a conspiracy theory, with the video, and I still have people who are texting and commenting and DMing me about their comments that some of them have just disappeared. Now, I know what happened the last time. I think there was a glitch with the YouTube channel.
Yes.
Okay. Which was not pilot error. But now you can see comments see, and this is what happens. They can call me out, they can call you out. But when we call them out, they don't like it. So the comments now should be, coming in at a certain pace, and we don't pick and choose. We don't play favorites.
No.
I mean, I told you the one guy, remember I said something and he was basically like, well, who the F is watching you? I put it up on the board. You are. I don't have a problem with that. Finally, Angel gets respect. Hold on a second. He's always gotten respect. I mean, look, now it's equal frame. This is ridiculous. I mean, the next thing I know, like all of a sudden, the drive with Q is going to be a byline. Right?
No, that will not happen.
Would you have played Barkley?
The fan inside, I would say yes. The coach, no. And even if Nick had the conversation or he didn't have the conversation, one or two, I would say that if Barkley said I want to sit down, that's up to him. Now, who knows? 2 runs against the Giants, he probably got 120.
Hold on. Who do you think's decision ultimately? Who do you think made the final? Do you believe Jeffrey Lurie and Howie said, "Okay, Nick, it's on you"?
I think it was Howie's call.
You think it was Roseman's call?
Mm-hmm. To rest him up. I mean, because what else? You're so close to breaking that record, unless, and I know it has been mentioned, unless Barkley wanted to keep Dickerson's record intact. I'm just listen.
No,
who knows? But my
or
thing
what?
is,
He didn't want to break it against the Giants. I mean, is that another?
Nah, that was just dumb. I saw that a bunch too. It just didn't make any freaking sense.
I mean, did you what? Listen, you know what screwed the Giants among many things was going on Hard Knocks, because now that stupid, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping tonight if he goes to Philadelphia. No shit. I got news for you. He's in Philadelphia. We're not even going to give that gentleman FaceTime. That's enough. I don't even want to see it. Get Trevor off the screen with that nonsense. Get AJ Brown. What was it? The fan from Delco going, I got you.
Yeah. Should he have signed? And who knows if he did or not? I would have gotten, if I'm Tanner, I would have gotten another football of the many they already have.
Yeah.
Signed it, even if
Can't do it. You need the game day. You need the game day Duke. You have to. You just come on, man. You never forget your first.
All right. A joke from Ex-Madman now, but
I will say this though: if it was Sirianni's call, and maybe there's a part of Sirianni that didn't want him to play for fear of injury, it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because the rub is, if he would have got hurt, we would have all crucified Nick Sirianni. So, staying that for a moment, I will ask you this: if they lose in the wild card round, and I get it, we're not even there yet. But if they lose in the wild card round or the divisional round, or show up in the wild card round and lose like they did last year against Tampa Bay, do you believe they will fire the head coach?
Yeah. Yeah. Same way it's so I made the argument this morning on my show, and I said kind of for the route you were going, what if, and they are getting into a wild card, but what happens, the same thing, if they lose, Barkley decided to rest, had the opportunity of breaking the record. So you took the rest, and then
that's.
I know it sounds insane. I get it.
It's not that it sounds insane, and I'm not trying to like jump on you, but I am, because one has nothing to do. Why do people believe if he rests and they come out and they lose 27-26 on a last second field goal, it's because he rests?
Oh, no, I'm not saying because he rests. What I'm saying is if he decided just for one play, let's just say he came in for the game and came up short by 2 yards.
Are you talking about Sunday?
Correct.
Okay.
But
my thing is there's no correlation to bearing upon what might or might not happen in the wildcard game. If they have a no-show against Tampa, then all bets are off.
Right.
What if Jalen Hurts, who's still in concussion protocol, now you're talking, they really needed that bye because you get another week off. They don't have a bye. So now you're talking potential rust. Maybe they come out slow out of the gate. I mean, I don't think one has anything to do with the other. I believe there is immense pressure for this team to make a deep run. Under the circumstances, you go and get Saquon. AJ Brown is still a beast. You got Smith. You got a good tight end. You got Jalen Hurts. You got an offensive line. You got a defense that can make plays. I believe the Philadelphia Eagles, to a man, back them in a corner, they feel they can go on the road and they can beat a team like Minnesota, Green Bay, a team like Detroit. I mean, we don't want that. We want you guys to pay attention while you're driving. I wonder, listening on the app or listening online on the website, which apparently still trips up some of our listeners.
Yeah.
All right, 5:54. We'll do our picks on the other side. 727-858-6650. Quick timeout. We will come back. We will close it up on a Friday. And hopefully Angel will still be on that split screen. 15 to play with.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Download the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game app and tell your friends
that
Florida has a new
Quick,
leader in
would you
digital
like to
sports
say any
radio.
business? 727-858-6650. All right. I don't know. I can go dry. I can't hear the music, so don't worry about it. I will give you an expedited on my picks for Week 18. Our BYP segment powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off BYP 20. I only have 3 games this weekend that I like, and I think you guys already know where I'm going. I do like Miami against the Jets. I think the Jets are just a dead man walking team. Aaron Rodgers is going to go out and try to get that 500 touchdown. That total is 38.5. I'm looking at this game as the under, but I do like Miami, who has a very slim shot, depending upon how everything breaks, of making the playoffs, very outside, if you will. The second game, obviously, is that Sunday night game. I'm kind of going to flip the script. I think Dan Campbell is going to be extremely aggressive because they know that the secondary is porous. They know Minnesota can score. They're going to have to score 24 to 28 to win that game. But I think there's something going on with Minnesota, a little juju this year, man. And I think the Darnold story is one of the best we've seen over the last 15, 20 years. I think he's rewriting, his chapter of his career. I think he's earning a lot of money. I think Minnesota gets to win and they lock up home field. And that, believe it or not, might be beneficial to a team like the Eagles that feel they can go in Minnesota as opposed to going in Detroit and try to match them point for point. So I do like Minnesota on the road. And then the third game, and I was really torn with this game, and this is going to kill Vince, who's a Steelers fan. Look, Cincinnati needs to win. And Cincinnati and Joe Burrow and that offense is playing at a sick level. I don't know if the Steelers are going to be able to put up 28 points because I think they're going to need 28 points. They haven't scored more than 28 since they beat Cincinnati, but that's a different team a month ago. So I do like Cincinnati in this spot. I do like Cincinnati with the points, and I like Cincinnati on the money line as well against Pittsburgh. So Big Dom is a rodent. I just haven't glanced a look. So those are the picks. We'll dissect them a little more tomorrow on BYP. And just a reminder too, so going forward, you got me 5 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 to 6. And we see the engagement in 4 o'clock hour. You guys hanging with us till 6. We appreciate it. Tuesday, Thursday, the audio version, which means all you have to do is go. I'm doing this in my soft, gentle voice. If you don't, what happened now? I do my live reads. What are you going to share the screen like we're in a tutorial right now?
Yeah.
I got to walk the listening audience and the viewing audience through this.
Sure do. It's the way it works. Sorry. Just so everybody gets a play-by-play.
No, you know why you're kind of acting like this right now? Very juvenile and very immature because you get tired of the drive with Q callers and listeners not being able to find the audio version. So if you can squint, I'll walk you through it. If you can squint, I will walk you through it right now. All you have to do, SR1029thegame.com, put it in your browser, click on Sports Radio 1029 The Game tab if you want, or stay on the home page, scroll down, and what do you see? To your left column, in the middle, the drive with Q, click it, and you're good to go. See? That's it. Does anyone have a question? If you do, please raise your hand in the Zoom call. You just get tired of having to explain it to the masses. You get very agitated.
Well, listen.
Just admit you get agitated.
It's self-explanatory.
But I would prefer if you just admit that you get agitated.
It's self-explanatory.
Because the problem is afterwards, I have Angel blowing up my phone. Oh, coño, que la madre.
And listen, it wouldn't be a year without complaining about something or another. It's just the way it works. It's 2025 days into it.
How about Lloyd mentioning with Kirk Cousins, most likely a March 1st cap casualty? All the money they paid him in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I thought they were going to struggle, and I thought Cousins was going to be benched probably 7 or 8 games into the season. Now, imagine Kirk Cousins going to the Jets or the Giants or Cleveland. I mean, this guy has made a career. You talk about business Hall of Fame, Kirk Cousins and his agent. It's absurd the amount of money that
Wait. Is he equal? Is he equal? Who's our guy from St. Louis? And then the Eagles traded for him. Same thing, collected paycheck after paycheck. God almighty.
The guy from St. Louis.
He was traded, I believe, for Nick Foles. After this was
you're talking Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who to this day, people will tell me he had one of the most talented arms in the NFL. Sam Bradford didn't win diddly in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, stop. But Sam Bradford, to your point, Sam Bradford made a lot of money. Sam Bradford didn't have one winning record his entire career. I think if you go by 2 or 3 starts, maybe, but I'll pull up his numbers right now. Sam Bradford, contract wise. Let me see. Substantial amount of money, man. Substantial amount of money. Sam Bradford, career earnings. Kirk Cousins, I mean, his career earnings dwarf it, right?
Mm-hmm.
129 million for Sam Bradford.
At the time where 129 million was like close to $1 billion.
Well, what do you think Kirk Cousins' career earnings are?
I'm going to go with carry to one. I'm 305.
This was as September 2024, 231.5, which is the 4th highest mark in NFL history. How much do you think Sam Darnold will command money-wise in the offseason?
As ridiculous as these contracts are going, I wouldn't be surprised.
Is Sam Darnold a $35 million a year quarterback?
No. Because you're catching for number one, you're catching lightning in a bottle for 1 year, as I mentioned earlier on my show. It's what it is. And now you have people saying, what if the Vikings decide they want to trade away, or they should trade away McCarthy?
Yeah.
It's just, that's silly nonsense to me. Like, the kid hasn't played that one NFL game. And
no, he arguably he was the best quarterback on the board.
Right.
And they also have Daniel Jones on their roster as well. Daniel Jones will probably be with Tennessee or probably be with Cleveland. You know, one of those teams is going to think they can squeeze something out of him. You know, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, they're going to bounce around a little more. Darnold's interesting. I'm going to tell you why. And you tell me if you guys would draw this parallel. So Darnold's career kind of reminds me of what happened with Rich Gannon. Right? Rich Gannon was with Minnesota, you know, not bad, bounced around Kansas City. But Rich Gannon, you know, from the time he was 35, 36, 37, MVP with Oakland, put up monster numbers, you know, and monster back then, 26, 27 touchdowns. He threw for close to 4,700 yards. Like, he was kind of like that cast off. Darnold obviously hasn't played as many games leading up, and Darnold's much younger, but I feel as though, you know, some of these quarterbacks were so dismissive, right? Baker Mayfield leads Cleveland to a playoff win against Pittsburgh, gets hurt. They want to show goodbye, you know, Baker. They want Deshaun Watson. Obviously, it doesn't pan out. Jared Goff can't get along, right? It was just like, hey, man, if you look at Jared Goff and, why are they not letting him throw? Jeff Fisher, has a little bit of the run with McVay, doesn't work out. Here we go in Detroit, flourishing. Darnold bounced around. The Jets, Carolina. Darnold wanted to re-sign with San Francisco, but he also wanted to test the market. Signs with Minnesota, no shot of playing. And what happens? The rookie goes down, as you alluded to, and he's grabbed control of that opportunity, right? And he's going to, I think Sam Darnold will sign if it's not with Minnesota, I think Darnold's signing a 5-year, $150 million contract. I think Darnold has played himself into the $30 million a year category.
Would it be silly for him to go back to New York? With that current ownership group, even if Louis Regg, let's just say Brian Flores become head coach GM?
That's a great question. It would be a great story, though.
Sure would.
Imagine Sam Darnold going back to New York after the 2-year debacle of Aaron Rodgers and leading the Jets to the playoffs and kind of exercising, his demons early on in his career where he was seeing ghosts and footsteps. He's guys like Darnold, Goff, Mayfield, they're likable guys. Like, you can root for those guys. I think Darnold got a raw deal because the knock on Darnold was he wasn't seeing down the field. Right. He was seeing the pass rush. He wasn't looking over the linemen, the edge rushers, right? He wasn't, these young quarterbacks, you follow their eye. So when they're basically locked in on a wide receiver, that's when they get, jittery. You talk about the interceptions or you locked in and it's an easy pick as opposed to standing in the pocket. And that's what he's doing this year. He's standing in the pocket and he's looking down the field. It's not check down like we see with Cousins, like we are seeing with Daniel Jones. And I think that's also when you're sacked over and over and over, you sit there and you just say, I think again, a buck 25, a buck 30. Oh, there you go. The hater. No. SportsCenter said today, Darnold can get 3 to 4, 100 million. No way in hell he deserves it. But why not? So what is that? He said 3 years, 100 million.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So if it's 4 years, you're bringing it down by 25 million per year.
Hold on. Let me just verify this. 33 million. Yeah. Well, if it's 4 years, that's right. Liberal arts math. YCP. 88.1 radio, York College, 25 million a year. Right. I think Darnold is a $30 million quarterback. I think he's played himself. What if they get to the NFC Championship? Hell, what if they win the friggin' Super Bowl? Like, who are we to say he doesn't deserve that? Look at what he's done. It's because people think it's an aberration. That's the problem. People fool me once, right? On me. Or on you, shame on you, fool me twice on me. They look at Sam Darnold, and I know it's going to happen. Mark my words, because our listening audience, they're very astute, but they're friggin' ball breakers, and they're going to hold me to this. If Darnold goes out in the NFC Championship down 6, and he throws a pick late, everyone's going to come on Monday and be like, how's your slinging Sammy Darnold now? That's not fair. You have to look at the body of work. Nobody saw this coming from Sam Darnold. Nobody. I think it's different system, right head coach, perfect timing for him, and he's taking advantage of it. Is it just possible? I know people don't like to have these conversations when you talk about sports, but is it possible that maybe it's just his time? I know people what are we doing? Is Q going to sit there before he gets off the air and he's going to thank Jesus? That's not what I'm doing. All I'm saying is it possible that maybe it's just his time and he's taking advantage of it?
It reminded me there for a second on my cousin Vinny when he starts asking a question. Oh, let me finish.
I mean, he's played exceptionally well, and there will be a team out there. If they're giving Kirk Cousins this type of money, Sam Darnold's going to make 25, 30 million a year. He is. Maybe Darnold signs with Pittsburgh. How do you like that, Vince? Get rid of Russ, let him go cook and marinate somewhere else. Get rid of Fields. I hope Darnold signs with Pittsburgh, and I hope they give him 35 friggin' million a year. So Vince, who's a diehard Steelers fan, can sit there and be like, oh, it was a great signing. Look what he's doing this year for the Steelers. Ha! That's karma.
Could happen.
Yeah. It could happen. All right, we got to start start wrapping up. We didn't get the joke at the end, and I probably
Sure didn't. He started with it. It'll pop in when the rolling credits go out.
Yeah, right. We're roll them out. Oh, speaking of credits, by the way, and I know we hit the top of the hour, 6:00 on the East Coast. I told you I watched horrible. Don't do that, Vince. Come on, brother. I told you I watched a horrible movie.
Yeah.
Carry On. It was so bad. It was good. The acting was absurd. Absurd. I mean, the storyline was ridiculous, right? But I'm telling you, it was an hour and 50. I was like, you know what, man? It's like a bad date. When you're in, you're in. That's it. You're 20 minutes in. I'm taking it for the team, brother. I'm going all the way through to the end credits. It was so bad that I encourage everyone, if you have a chance, watch it this weekend. Shameless plug. All right. So you got the NFL games on Saturday. Obviously, the games on Sunday. I will do a live Back Your Play tomorrow on SR 102. If you followed along Professor Martinez's tutorial, you know exactly how to get the audio. Most action-packed, horrible movie I've ever been locked in on. Thank you. It was so bad. It was good. I mean, you got shit happening in an airport terminal. Where is John McClane and Die Hard 2? By the way, a friend of mine actually just saw the original Die Hard. What are you waiting for?
Holy craps.
That's what I'm saying. Really? Really? I mean, that's like someone turning around and being like, oh, I just saw The Godfather. Oh, I just saw Goodfellas. Oh, I just saw Scarface for the first time. Really? You're coming to me? You're texting me saying I'm going to get locked in on Die Hard? I didn't know that the father from Family Matters was the cop.
Correct.
Like, texting me that nonsense?
Yeah, Carl.
That friggin' movie. Yeah, Carl. That movie was made in 88. What are you doing? And it's a Christmas movie, by the way.
Does he still have a VCR? Maybe that's why.
Well, I mean, listen, we know about the VCR, and God forbid you get the wrong tape stuck in there, right? And we kind of leave it at that. Everyone knows if you listen to the show religiously, you are familiar with the squigglies. All right, so we start wrapping it up. Don't forget, start the week off with Pete Shepard Show, 7 to 10, Martinez and Company, 10 to 12. You'll catch me Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 4 to 6. Audio version 5 to 6. Sorry, guys. Audio version 5 to 6 on Tuesday. Lloyd Mance's show. You got Jay's show. You got Talking Hoops as well. We're adding a couple revisions from the website. I know as I wrap it up and I want to get my live reads in, usually Angel wants to remind a listening audience of something. So with that, go ahead, because you got that look like I'm forgetting something.
No. I was just going to say, if it's cold outside, you can go ahead and warm yourself up with a fresh roasted cup of coffee from freshroastedcoffee.com, and make sure you insert your discount code BYP20.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or MAC20.
Yes.
Or LVIF20. I mean, listen, we're trying to, listen, we're getting the host to get some promo codes with coffee. You guys out there, take advantage of it. You get 20% off. Depending upon where you're at, you enjoy coffee no matter what. But if you're in a cold state, you want a little hot toddy, why not? BYP20. Don't forget, follow us on social media, Facebook, IG, X, the YouTube channel. You guys are fantastic. We always enjoy the engagement. You can keep it coming as well. 727-858-6650. You can connect with us on social media. As I already alluded to, it's CSN Florida at CSN Florida. Very, very, very easy to get a hold of at Rich Q on Q, at SR1029 The Game, Pete Shepard at Pete Shep 326, Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance. You got Jay at JFANNEZ19, Jonathan Marshall at John_Marshall3. We'll have him on next week because God forbid I want to talk a little NBA without pissing off the master. I mean, God forbid Q's allowed to talk friggin' NBA again on his show, right? I mean, my goodness, probably too busy studying the NFL. Is that a shot at me?
I don't know. I thought it was going to be we didn't get the joke. We got the starting.
Maybe because I'm taking a shot at someone who's watching Die Hard, and maybe the counter is, people take offense to some of the comments on the show. I mean, listen, I like the little, the little bottom scroll there.
Yeah.
Oh, you doing that in real time, huh?
See.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Probably Monday come on, my monitor is going to be, my head's going to be smaller, and the thumbs up is probably going to be a middle finger. Everyone have a good sports weekend. And again, we're always powered by our good friends over at Zen Auto Concepts, fresh roasted coffee, and Play It Again Sports. Appreciate Jovan Alford jumping on board. Lloyd Vance, you'll catch him Monday, 8 to 9. Lloyd Vance is Insider Football. Mi hermano, Angel Martinez, keeping us on the air, producing the show, and having us locked in for the last 2 hours. You'll catch us on demand as well. Download the app. Check out the website. Bookmark it as well. Tomorrow, live BYP, most likely in the afternoon. I'll tweet it out. I'll put it on Facebook. So we'll go through the gamut of those games on Saturday as well as Sunday. We'll be back in the saddle on Monday to recap all the NFL, all the college football, all the NBA as well on Monday's show. As always, be safe, be sound. I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.